After that shooting on March 11, 2022, were there any, did you become aware of a shooting at 12 Atlanta?
Yes.
When was that shooting?
I believe that the incident on the highway took place at 3 a.m. Fast forward to about almost just before 10 o'clock, the shooting at 12 Atlanta took place.
10 o'clock a.m. or 10 o'clock
p.m.? I think the call for service came in around 9:47.
And where is 12 Atlanta?
In Summerhill.
And are you familiar with that location?
I am.
How are you familiar with that location?
I believe in 2019 and 2020, it was 12 Atlanta itself, the convenience store, was the target of drive-by shootings.
And was there anyone injured on March 11, 2022?
Yes.
And who was that?
I believe the gentleman's name is Cortez Houston. He's a YFN associate.
And has there been anyone arrested for that shooting?
Yes.
Who's that?
A gentleman named Stephen Harris.
And are you familiar with that name?
Yes.
How?
He's documented, not by me, but another member of the gang unit as a member of YSL.
After that incident on March 12, 2022, did you become aware of a shooting, without saying any name, of a shooting on Cleveland Avenue?
Yes.
Without saying any names, how did you become aware of the shooting on Cleveland Avenue?
I was in the wire room monitoring the calls in the wiretap, and we heard a shootout being described on the wiretap.
After hearing about that shooting on the wiretap, did you ever come to learn of a shooting on March 14, 2022 at I-20 in Windsor?
Yes.
Okay. When did you first learn about that shooting?
I believe somebody from the gang unit that I work with had called and let me know that a shooting had come up in that area.
Okay. And once you learned about that information, what, if anything, did you do?
I spoke with investigator Flores, who I believe was the on-call gang investigator for that night.
And did you learn of the individual? Was someone killed at that location?
Yes.
Okay. Did you learn of the name or the identity of that individual?
A gentleman by the name of Shymel Drinks.
Now, when you first heard that name, were you familiar with that individual at all?
I was not.
When you first heard that name, did you know at that time if this murder had anything to do with any gangs?
No.
And you say no, why is that?
Just because I did not recognize him, I didn't know him, so I had no reason to believe at that time it was.
After hearing about the shooting at I-20 and Windsor Road, did you look at any social media accounts?
I did the next day.
Why were you looking at social media?
Just in conjunction with The Wire, we were always monitoring what was going on, just to be abreast of anything we may hear, just so we were aware of what was going on, so we can understand the context of things we were hearing.
And as you were observing social media, did you see anything of note to you as you were perusing social media the next day after the March 14th killing of Mr. Shymel Drinks?
I did.
What, if anything, did you find?
I saw several posts of a gentleman that matched the photo of what I saw of Shymel Drinks at the crime scene being made.
Okay. And when you say was being made, who was it being made by?
Members of YFN.
And about how many posts did you see when you were just kind of viewing and observing?
There were numerous posts. I don't think I could put a number on it.
And when you saw those posts, did you ever capture those posts?
I began capturing them just in case they were needed.
You said you captured just in case they were needed.
Correct.
Okay. Now, showing you what's been admitted at 465 BV, is that Mr. Drinks?
It is.
And who is the person posting this picture?
That is a gentleman that goes by the name Kelvin Watts or Shell Kell.
Okay. And were you familiar with Shell Kell?
Yes.
Okay. And how were you familiar with Shell Kell?
From past investigations involving both of these groups.
Okay. Now I'm going to show you 467 BV. Who is the person? Is that also Mr. Drinks?
It is.
And who is posting that? Who made the post?
It's made by 44 Stevo, which I know to be Steven Johnson.
Okay. And I apologize. Going back to 465, what was Shell Kell's Instagram handle?
It's Shell Kell _ Nutlife.
All right. Now back to 467 BV. 44 Stevo, what's his given name?
Steven Johnson.
All right. And was he associated with YFN?
Yes.
All right. And next is 468 BV. Who made the post?
The username is going to be YFN Fat 14. That's going to be Sabian Cluster.
And is that the Sabian cluster that we talked about a few moments ago with the back and forth shooting?
It is.
All right. And what was that? What did that post say?
I don't feel right putting that behind your name, Nut, with the broken heart.
Okay. Once you started seeing these posts and examples of these posts, what, if anything, did you do? Did you assist at all with this investigation at that time on March 15th?
I didn't, because when you're the affiant of a wire, it's a lot of things you have to do. You have to manage schedules and people in the room and review all the calls. So I was kind of sidetracked. So I was capturing these, working in the wire room, and then I went home to get some sleep.
Now I'm going to take you to March 16th, 2022. Did you have the occasion to respond to a shooting at 2830 Waters Road?
I did.
And how did you get involved with responding to the shooting at 2830 Waters Road?
One of my partners, either investigator Dabney or investigator Flores, called and let me know that there was a shooting at the location.
And let me ask you this. Back in 2022, where were you working?
The Fulton County District Attorney's Office.
And was that a common practice that members of the APD gang unit would reach out to you if there was a shooting that they were responding to?
If it was gang related and something that we had been working on, absolutely. I talked to them daily.
All right. And did you respond to that location?
I did.
Sitting here today, do you recall what time you responded to that location?
I want to say I made it out there probably around 2 a.m., I believe.
You said around 2 a.m.?
Around 2 a.m., I believe.
Court $10 for one. Once you got to the house, what, if anything, did you do?
I met with my partner, investigator Flores, and I spoke with the officers on scene, and they said they had several victims that were separated amongst different cars on scene while they were still sorting out what was going on. And I got the names of the people that were present.
Okay. And were you familiar with any of the individuals who were present?
Yes.
Okay. Who did you know?
I knew Mr. Garlington, of course, because he was one of my wiretap targets that we had running. And I knew Mr. Shannon Stillwell. I know Mr. Stillwell, I think he goes by Jackson also.
Okay. And how long have you known Mr. Garlington?
Probably say since 2014, if not longer.
Right. And how long had you known Mr. Jackson?
2013 or 2012.
All right. When you went out there, did you speak with Mr. Garlington or Mr. Jackson?
I spoke with both.
And were either of them able to provide you any information about what had occurred at their home at the home that night?
Your Honor, I'm going to object.
I did.
Okay. And was he able to provide you any information regarding the shooting that had occurred that night?
Not anything of substance, really.
Okay. Was he able to give you any description of what happened that night?
If I remember correctly, he just said, I think when he arrived at the location, people just started shooting, but he didn't know what had happened or why.
And while you met with him, when you got to the scene, were there cars in the driveway?
Yes.
And was he able to identify a car that he was driving?
Yes.
Okay. And what kind of car was that?
He said a white Audi.
And did he point out that Audi to you?
I don't know if he pointed it out. I think he may have said like that one over there. And I looked, and there was one closest to the street, and there were cars parked in the yard on the right side of the house. And there was a white Audi that was like an Audi sedan closest to the street. There was an Audi SUV and an Audi sedan, and it was the sedan that was parked closer to the street.
And did you ever take pictures of that Audi? Or you were investigator Flores take pictures of that Audi?
One of us did, yes.
And did you take pictures of Mr. Garlington?
Yes.
Okay. And what about Mr. Stillwell?
One of us did, yes.
Were you familiar with an individual by the name of Miles Farley?
I had seen him, but I'd never interacted with him before.
Had you seen social media accounts for him?
Yeah, social media accounts, music videos. I'd seen him around with the guys.
Was he present on that morning of March 16, 2022?
He was.
And did you take pictures of him?
One of us, I think Investigator Flores may have.
Now, when you met with or spoke to Mr. Jackson, were they victims of the shooting?
Yes.
At that time, when you met or spoke with Mr. Jackson, Mr. Garlington, did you have any knowledge of who the suspects were in the March 14th murder?
No.
Had you on March 16th talked to Investigator Hogan about his homicide?
No.
Excuse me, was Investigator Hogan the lead detective on the homicide?
Yes.
Shymel Drinks. When you spoke with Mr. Garlington and Mr. Jackson on March 16th, had you seen any surveillance video from the homicide on March 14th, 2022?
No.
When you met with or spoke with Mr. Jackson, did you have any knowledge of a suspect vehicle as related to that March 14th, 2022 homicide?
No. Other than the victim, I had no knowledge of the circumstances or anything with the investigation.
Did you eventually leave the location at 2830 Waters Road?
I did.
All right. You said this was about 2 o'clock in the morning.
Somewhere around there.
Did you at some point in time go to Atlanta Police Department on March 16, 2022?
Yes.
What was your purpose of going to the Atlanta Police Department?
I had to return to check on the wire. I got a few hours of sleep, maybe a couple hours of sleep, but I could. I returned to check on the wire room and also stopped by to see Detective Kevin Leonpacker. Stopped by his office to talk to him for a minute.
And would you work with Detective Leonpacker with your investigations?
All the time.
Okay. And just as a side note, what types of things would you ask Detective Leonpacker to do with your cases that you were working on?
I would bounce investigative ideas off him sometimes with cases that I had, but also, most importantly, if throughout my investigations I would obtain cell phones through search warrants and things like that, or in evidence, I would bring them to him with a search warrant for him to conduct a forensic extraction of the phones for me.
Okay. Now, going back to March 16, did you make it to APD?
Yes.
Okay. When you got there, did you make it to Kevin Leonpacker's desk where he sits?
Yes.
Are there any investigators that sit close to him in the office?
Yes.
Is Detective Hogan one of those investigators?
It's Detective Leon Packer, empty cubicle, Detective Hogan.
Once you went to go speak with Detective Leon Packer on March 16, 2022, did you see Detective Hogan?
I did. On my way to his desk, I passed Hogan.
Okay. And what happened once you passed him? What happened?
When I walked past Hogan's desk, I said, "Hey, Hogan." I said, "Your victim," I said, "is being posted by some of the YFN guys. Just checking to see what you got. What do you got? Like, what's going on?" And then he said, "Well, I got some surveillance video and some people, but I don't know, not much else."
He said he didn't have much else.
Yeah, he just.
At that point in time, did he show you the surveillance video?
Yeah, I said, "Well, show me what you got. Let me see what you got." And he's pulled. I talked to Kevin for a second. He said, "Come on over," and I looked at the video that he had.
And what video did you look at?
It was video from a gas station that I recognized to be at Fulton and Windsor.
Okay. And what did you see on the surveillance video?
He showed me some individuals that he had identified as his suspects.
Okay. And when you saw the video, what, if anything, did you do?
I immediately recognized Mr. Stillwell from my interaction with him the night before because he was wearing the same clothes. And I recognized Mr. Farley on the video.
Okay. And you said the night before. Were you at the office on March 16th as well?
Sorry, it was the same day. It was 2 a.m., sleep for a few hours, went to the office and met with them. So it was the same day.
And when you watched the surveillance video, was this surveillance video from March 14, 2022?
Yes.
And you had just, not just, but earlier that morning had seen Mr. Jackson or Stillwell Jackson in the same clothes that you saw him in on the video.
Correct.
Right. And then you said you also recognized Miles Farley on the video.
Correct.
All right. Once you recognized both Mr. Farley and Mr. Stillwell, what, if anything, did you do?
There was a third individual in the video that I knew to associate with them, but I didn't know his name. So I told investigator Hogan he may want to get with somebody else to get a name on that person. And then he showed me the vehicle associated with his case.
And did he show you the vehicle from the surveillance video or something else?
I believe it was a surveillance video.
And what, if anything, did you do when you saw the vehicle, his suspect vehicle?
I recognized it as the white Audi with the Maryland tags from the home at Waters Road that I'd seen hours prior.
Now, you said that you did not recognize the third individual in the surveillance video, and you directed Hogan to speak with someone else. Did you direct him to speak with anyone specifically?
Well, I recognized him by face. Just a name, I didn't have a name. So I think Investigator Belknap was either in the homicide office or he was upstairs, and I called either him to come to the desk or come downstairs to help Hogan.
Okay. And let me ask you this. I want to go back to March 16, 2022. When you spoke with Mr. Jackson about what happened that night, how did the conversation come up about what vehicle was his? Do you recall?
I believe that was prompted by when he said I just got here and they started shooting, or something like that. I just got here and they started shooting, or I pulled up and they started shooting. So I said, well, what vehicle were you in? I think that's what prompted that question.
And when you spoke with Mr. Jackson on March 16th, did he ever speak with you about where he was in the days prior to you seeing him on Waters Road?
No.
While you were meeting with, or not meeting with, but speaking with Mr. Jackson, did you ever speak with him about the homicide that had occurred on March 15th at I-20 and Windsor Road?
No.
Now, going back to later in the day when you were at APD, at any point after speaking with Hogan, did you take any steps to continue assisting him in his investigation?
I went upstairs and reviewed the wiretap data for that time.
And when you say that time, what time are you referencing?
The time that would encompass his homicide taking place.
And did you find any calls around the time of when the homicide took place?
I did.
Right. And we'll come back to that. Once you went upstairs and reviewed and went to the wiretap room and kind of reviewed those calls, what, if anything, did you do next?
I think I just continued to let him know that I was available if he needed anything from our end, but
Did you ever come to take out a search warrant for the home at 2830 Waters Road?
oh, yes, when I was reviewing the calls, now that would be reviewing the calls for the night before. When I responded out at 2 a.m., I began to review those calls from that incident and learned some information that led me to obtain a Fulton County search warrant for the location at Waters Road.
And so let me understand clearly, you heard some information on the wiretap.
Correct.
And was that information on the wiretap from March 16th?
Correct. The time that we responded out there and I encountered Mr. Garlington and Mr. Stillwell.
And based upon what you heard on the wiretap, you then went and applied for a search warrant at Waters Road.
Correct.